Hello, friend. Welcome to History ZZZ. Get comfortable. Let your body settle into wherever you are resting. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands go still. Take one slow breath in and let it go. Tonight we go to Siberia. Not the Siberia of gulags and political exile, though that exists. The other Siberia, the vast, ancient, almost incomprehensibly empty one. The taiga, the boreal forest that stretches for thousands of miles across the top of the world, a sea of pine and spruce and fir interrupted only by rivers and bogs and the occasional settlement. It is the morning of June 30th, 1908. Something is about to happen. No one near the center will survive to describe it. The forest will describe it instead. The Podkamanaya Tunguska River flows through central Siberia. The region around it in 1908 is as remote as anywhere on Earth. The nearest significant settlement, Vanavara, is 40 miles away. The nearest city with rail connection is hundreds of miles distant. The Evenki people have lived in this region for generations. Nomadic reindeer herders and hunters who knew the taiga intimately, who could read the weather in the clouds and the season in the trees and the landscape in the stars. On the morning of June 30th, the Evenki camps nearest to the central point felt the event first. Tents knocked flat, people thrown to the ground, reindeer scattered in panic, a wave of heat and pressure rolling through the forest. People miles away saw a second sun in the sky. People even farther away reported being thrown off their feet by the shock wave that followed. What they described, when the researchers finally came years later to ask, was a sky that fell. At approximately 7:15 in the morning local time, something exploded over the Tunguska region. The explosion was estimated at 10 to 15 megatons of TNT equivalent, roughly 1,000 times the energy of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Some estimates go higher. It exploded approximately 5 to 10 kilometers above the ground. The fireball was seen from hundreds of miles away, a column of light brighter than the sun moving across the sky. Witnesses described it as blue-white and brilliant. Some thought it was a meteorite. Some thought it was the end of the world. The shockwave knocked people off their feet in Vanavara, 40 miles away. Windows shattered in towns 60 miles distant. The explosion was heard clearly 600 miles away. At the center of the event, 2,000 square kilometers of forest were instantly flattened. 80 million trees knocked horizontal, all pointing outward from a single central point. No crater, no meteorite. When the first scientific expedition finally reached the site, 19 years after the event in 1927, they found a scene unlike anything they had expected. The leader was Leonid Kulik, a Russian mineralogist who had been trying to organize an expedition to the site since 1921. Bureaucracy, distance, and the upheavals of the Russian Revolution had delayed him for years. He finally arrived in 1927 with a small team. What he saw from the hills overlooking the blast zone stopped him cold. For miles in every direction, the trees were flat, not burned. The immediate area showed some scorching, but most trees had simply been knocked down, pointed away from the center, like hair blown back in a strong wind, but on an inconceivable scale. At the very center, some trees were still standing, stripped of branches but upright. The blast had come from directly above them, pressing straight down rather than laterally. Kulik had expected a crater. There was no crater. He had expected a meteorite. He would spend his remaining years looking for it. He never found it. The absence of a crater is the central mystery of Tunguska. When a meteorite strikes the Earth, it makes a crater. The object impacts the ground, excavates material, leaves a scar. There are thousands of impact craters on Earth, most of them ancient and eroded but still visible. Tunguska left no crater. This immediately ruled out a standard meteorite impact. Whatever caused the explosion did not reach the ground. It exploded in the air. An airburst, the term scientists use, occurs when a body entering the atmosphere at high speed and angle is subjected to such extreme pressure and heating that it disintegrates and explodes before reaching the surface. The energy is released into the air, not the ground. The shock wave travels downward and outward. The trees are flattened. No crater forms because the object never hit the ground. It vaporized in the atmosphere miles above. This explains the pattern. It explains the lack of crater. It does not definitively identify what the object was. The testimonies of witnesses are remarkable. An Evenki man named Chuchen, whose camp was about 40 miles from the center, described it to a researcher decades later. Early in the morning, when everyone was still asleep, there was a noise that shook everything, then a great blinding flash. There was a lot of heat and wind that knocked over tents. People were thrown around. A farmer in Vanavara reported seeing a column of bluish light as bright as the sun moving across the sky, then a flash and sound like gunfire. He was thrown from his porch. When he recovered, he could feel the heat from the explosion 40 miles away. The event was recorded on seismographs across Eurasia. Barometers in England detected the pressure wave as it circled the globe twice. For weeks after, the night skies over Europe and Asia were strangely luminous. People could read newspapers at midnight without a lamp. Dust from the explosion, high in the atmosphere, was scattering the light of the sun around the edge of the earth. In the century since the Tunguska event, many theories have been proposed. The leading scientific consensus today, a small asteroid or comet, roughly 50 to 80 meters in diameter, entered the atmosphere at high speed and disintegrated in an airburst above the Siberian forest. For an asteroid, a rocky body, the heat and pressure of atmospheric entry would have caused it to fragment and then explode. Most of the material would have been dispersed as fine dust that eventually settled across the region and beyond. For a comet, a body of ice and rock, the ice would have vaporized, leaving even less physical evidence behind. Both hypotheses fit the evidence. Neither can be definitively confirmed with the evidence we have. There have been more exotic theories. A miniature black hole which would have emerged from the other side of the Earth. No corresponding seismic event on the far side was recorded. Antimatter which would have annihilated on contact. The calculations do not work. And then there are the people who say, what if it wasn't from space at all? There is a Nikola Tesla theory. It is not taken seriously by mainstream science, but it has a certain charm. In 1908, Tesla was in the midst of his Wardenclyffe Tower project, an attempt to transmit electrical power wirelessly through the Earth. The tower was under construction on Long Island, New York. Tesla had boasted that he could light up the Arctic sky for polar explorer Robert Peary to use for navigation on his race to the North Pole. Some researchers have noted that the Tunguska event occurred roughly in the direction of the North Pole from New York, and roughly at the time Tesla claimed he was conducting experiments. The theory: Tesla accidentally released a massive electrical discharge that caused the explosion. The problem: the physics do not support it. The Wardenclyffe Tower was never completed and never demonstrated the capacity to transmit energy at this scale. The numbers do not work. But Tesla is Tesla. and mystery is mystery, and so the theory persists in the corners of the internet where such things live. One of the strangest aspects of the Tunguska event is how long it took the world to pay attention. The explosion happened in 1908. The first scientific expedition reached the site in 1927. 19 years. Why so long? Partly the remoteness of the location. Reaching the Tunguska region required a long journey by rail, then by river, then by sled through dense forest. It was not simply difficult. It was one of the more challenging logistical challenges in scientific exploration at the time. Partly the upheaval of the era, 1908 to 1927, encompassed World War I, the Russian Revolution, the Civil War, the founding of the Soviet Union. A mysterious explosion in Siberia was not the priority. Partly, the witness accounts were scattered and inconsistent. People described it in ways that seemed impossible, and without a physical site confirmed by scientists, it was easy to dismiss as exaggeration. The forest was there, flattened, for 19 years before anyone came to measure it. The forest grew back. This is worth noting, not as a platitude, but as a scientific observation about what happened after. Within a decade of the event, new growth was appearing in the blast zone. Within 2 decades, young trees were establishing. Within a century, much of the area had returned to forest. A different forest than before, with different species composition and different age distribution. But forest. The blast also had some unusual effects on the trees that survived. Trees at the edge of the blast zone showed accelerated growth in the years following the event, possibly from the release of nutrients, possibly from changes in soil composition. Nature reclaimed the site. Today, the central Tunguska region is a nature reserve. There is a small research station. The trees are tall again. If you walk through the forest today, you would not immediately know anything had happened there. You would have to look at the age of the trees, at the subtle radial pattern in their fall, at the soil chemistry, to read the event that is still written in the land. Let's sit with the scale for a moment. 2,000 square kilometers of forest flattened. If the Tunguska event had occurred 4 hours later in the day, Earth's rotation would have brought St. Petersburg directly under the path. A city of over 1 million people in 1908, capital of the Russian Empire. If the angle of entry had been slightly different, it might have struck land rather than exploding above it. A 50-meter asteroid exploding above a major city would destroy it completely. The Tunguska event was the largest such event in recorded history. It happened over the most remote inhabited region on Earth. The casualty count, as far as we know, approximately 3 reindeer. The universe is indifferent. The timing, this once, was kind. It will happen again. Scientists estimate events of this scale occur roughly every 1,000 years somewhere on Earth. Most will strike ocean. Some will not. In the weeks after the Tunguska event, the nights in Europe and Central Asia were strange. Observers reported unusual luminosity in the night sky, a silvery blue glow that allowed reading outdoors at midnight. Photographs could be taken at night without flash or long exposure. The horizon had a persistent brightness. This was the dust from the explosion, suspended in the stratosphere at high altitude, scattering sunlight from beyond the horizon. The nights of Tunguska. In London, newspaper correspondents sent telegrams about the strange light. Scientists in observatories noted increased stratospheric haze. Artists and writers noted an unusual quality of the midnight sky. Nobody in Europe or Asia knew yet what had caused it. The reports from Siberia had barely filtered out. The newspapers had not yet connected the explosion to the glowing sky. People just looked up and noticed that the night was brighter than usual. They did not know what they were seeing was the light of 80 million fallen trees dissipated into the upper atmosphere. The Evenki people who lived nearest to the event had their own understanding of what happened. In their tradition, the forest is inhabited by spirits, powerful presences that must be respected and propitiated. The sky has its own beings. The event of June 30th was, in the Evenki framework, an act of the sky deity Ogdi, a divine being who had been angered and expressed that anger in the destruction of the forest. Some Evenki avoided the blast zone for years. Some considered it cursed, some considered it sacred. This is not a primitive misunderstanding of what happened. It is a different framework for integrating an event that had no precedent in anyone's experience. When the scientists came in 1927 to ask what the Evenki knew, the testimony they collected was invaluable. Descriptions of what witnesses had seen and felt, preserved across 19 years, allowed researchers to reconstruct the event they had not witnessed. The Evenki did not understand the physics. They understood the experience. Both kinds of knowledge matter. Here is where the science stands today. In 2013, an asteroid entered the atmosphere over Chelyabinsk, Russia. A much smaller event, but one that was captured on thousands of dash cams and provided data that helped scientists better understand Tunguska. The Chelyabinsk asteroid was about 20 meters in diameter. It released energy equivalent to 30 times the Hiroshima bomb. It injured over 1,400 people from the shockwave and broken glass. The Tunguska object was estimated at 2 to 4 times that diameter. By 2019, a team of researchers had found strong evidence for an asteroid rather than a comet. Traces of material in the peat bogs of the blast zone consistent with stony asteroidal composition. Most scientists now believe the Tunguska event was caused by a small asteroid, perhaps 50 meters in diameter, that entered the atmosphere and disintegrated in an airburst approximately 5 to 10 kilometers above the forest. This is the leading hypothesis. It explains everything we observe. But the object itself is gone, vaporized in the atmosphere, and without physical evidence, certainty remains out of reach. The sky keeps it secret. Tonight, the Tunguska region is quiet. The forest has grown back. The river moves. The research station, when occupied, has a handful of scientists. Most of the time, it is empty. The trees that were knocked flat in 1908 are long decayed. New trees stand in their place. The only way to know what happened is to look at the pattern of their growth, the trace elements in the soil, the subtle alignment of the oldest fallen wood. The Podkamenaya Tunguska River moves through the forest exactly as it did on the morning of June 30th, 1908. It does not know what happened. It just flows. The sky above is brilliant with stars. In Siberia, far from any significant light pollution, the Milky Way is extraordinary. Those same stars were there that morning. None of them noticed. The universe is very large. The things that move through it are very small. We are very small. But we notice, and that is something. Let the Siberian night settle around you. Something very large exploded over this forest in 1908. It flattened 80 million trees. It circled the globe as a pressure wave. It lit up the European night for weeks, and then the forest grew back. And the scientists came and measured, and we built a fairly confident picture of what happened from the testimony of Evenki witnesses. The pattern of fallen trees, the traces in the peat, and the mathematics of atmospheric physics. We still cannot be completely certain, The object is gone. The sky keeps some things. You are safe right now. The sky above you is peaceful. Whatever moves through it tonight is not heading this way. Rest. Good night from Tunguska. Good night. In 2013, it happened again. A different rock, a smaller one, but the same phenomenon. On the morning of February 15th, a meteor entered the atmosphere over the Chelyabinsk region of Russia, roughly 1,000 miles from Tunguska, and exploded in an airburst at an altitude of 23 kilometers. The difference from 1908, it was caught on camera, by hundreds of cameras. Russian dashcams, security cameras, phones, weather cameras, all captured the brilliant streak across the morning sky and the flash of the explosion. The video footage is extraordinary. A brilliant fireball, then a shock wave that arrived 90 seconds later and shattered windows across the city. 1,491 people were injured, mostly from broken glass. But because of the cameras, because of the modern sensors, because of the global monitoring systems that now watch the sky, it was understood, measured, and documented within hours. In 1908, it took 19 years to mount the first expedition. In 2013, we had data by afternoon. We are learning to pay attention to the sky. The stars above you are mostly safe. Space contains many things. Most of them are not heading anywhere near us. The ones that are, we are increasingly able to see coming. We have telescopes now that scan the sky for near-Earth objects. We have prediction models that calculate trajectories decades in advance. We have, for the first time in the history of this planet, a species that knows the rocks are out there and is watching for them. We are not powerless. We are learning. The forest grew back, the river flows, the sky is vast and mostly peaceful. Rest in that. Good night. The Siberian night is very quiet. The river moves, the stars turn, the forest sleeps. Good night. Rest now. Good night from Siberia. Good night. Thank you for sitting with the mystery of Tunguska. History ZZZ has many more worlds waiting for you. The Nazca Lines, the Baghdad Battery, ancient Varanasi. Wherever you would like to rest tonight, we have a world for you. Sleep well wherever you are. History ZZZ.